mockery of Western weapons, but not everyone's buying it. CNN's Nick Robertson reports.
Toothless cats, battered Abrams, he says. The Russian state media anchor points to a huge graphic alleging flaws in the NATO tanks. His purposeful propaganda playing down risks.
Russia's propaganda machine is moving into high gear as the war in Ukraine nears its first anniversary. Vladimir Putin's shameless supporters in state media are making a mockery of Western weapons, but not everyone's buying it. CNN's Nick Robertson reports.
Toothless cats, battered Abrams, he says. The Russian state media anchor points to a huge graphic alleging flaws in the NATO tanks. His purposeful propaganda playing down risks the Russian troops in Ukraine does seem to be working. Sending tanks is going to be bad for the Americans and Germans, she says. We're going to win regardless, Sergei tells us. It's just enlarging the conflict. If we pull out, the West will put more pressure on us. But not everyone buys the state TV hype. Putin has killed off independent media, but not independence of mind. This young film student tells our team a friend was drafted and deployed, but has now disappeared. I'm for peace, she says. It's very sad. People are dying. I'm on the verge of tears here. I don't know if it's true or not, or what's going on in this war, this lady tells us, but I do know people who've been killed. Some of them are friends. All emotions the Kremlin likes to prey on. Around the capital, air defense systems have been lofted atop government buildings. The less than subtle message, Russia's under threat. It's leverage Putin needs to drum up more recruits for the increasingly unpopular meat grinder that is Ukraine's frontline trenches. In more primetime Putin propaganda, Yevgeny Popov pops a pun for the audience, tells them the German Leopard 2 tanks will burn very nicely. Another Putin acolyte, the insanely popular Vladimir Solovyov, asked the audience, after all this, isn't Berlin a lawful target? Such is the stitch-up in Russian media. Putin is able to spin almost any message he wants. His TV puppets serve farce and fear in equal measure. But even that's not going down so well with some. Everyone is listening to Solovyov's opinion, this lady says, but it would be good if the experts started expressing their real opinions instead of obeying orders from Putin. What's real is anyone's guess, and for some that means tuning out. This lady tells us she doesn't know about the tanks when we ask her opinion. I think that this is a political war and not a war for the people, this lady tells the team. What are we supposed to do, she says. Our opinions mean diddly squat. Increasingly isolated from outside views and under threat of harsh retribution if they dissent, Russians are stuck in a rut, in a war they don't want, with a leader they can't remove, and the threat of potential recruitment around the corner. They're doing what Russians have historically done in the face of adversity, focusing on their own survival. Nick Robertson, CNN, London.
So we told you that Western allies have promised to send tanks to Ukraine, but some countries are moving cautiously with committing specific numbers. Salma Aziz joins us from London with more. So Salma, President Zelensky got the tanks he wanted, but he's already asking for more. So take us through what's on Kyiv's wish list, and is the West willing to fulfill it?
Absolutely. It's really a race against time now to get those tanks to the front lines as quickly as possible. There's a few logistical issues here. These tanks are spread across over a dozen countries. Germany has to give pre-authorization. They are the manufacturers of these Leopard 2 tanks. They have to give pre-authorization for every country to deploy those tanks. They have to provide training. That's supposed to start as soon as possible for Ukrainian soldiers in Germany. And then there's the question of compensation. How will NATO or how will Germany pay for these tanks or compensate to countries that give these tanks to Ukraine? All of those logistics, again, being dealt with in Berlin. Take a listen to how Ukraine's defense minister responded when one reporter asked, how quickly are we going to see these tanks on the battlefield?
Minister, can you get the tanks to Ukraine in time?
Of course we will.
How long will it take to get there?
At the end of the first quarter of the year. And that's what we are going to do.
Yeah, how many months? 2, 3, 4?
I just said at the end of March, I think.
Now, the reason for this rush, the reason for this push is this counteroffensive. As the weather gets warmer, there's an expectation that Russian forces will pick up the tempo of the war, try to attack Ukrainian forces. Ukraine, of course, for its part, wants to push through. It's described these tanks as an iron fist that will allow them to spearhead their offensive in the spring. But a note of caution here, Kim. In total, we have just over 100 tanks that have been promised. Among them are those 30 Abrams, 31 Abrams to be exact, tanks from the United States. Those could take over a year before they actually arrive in Ukraine. As you heard there, the Leopard tanks arriving sooner, but this is a lot less than what President Zelensky says he needs. He was asking for over 300 tanks, and as I said, just over 100 going into Ukraine. But really what this is about is the bigger picture here, Kim. This is about the political will of allies to provide tanks, something that was unimaginable a year ago. So for Kyiv, they're hoping this opens the door a little bit to ask for more of those weapons on their wish list. Kim?
All right. Thanks so much, Salma Abdulaziz in London.
Quickly are we going to see these tanks on the battlefield?
Minister, can you get the tanks to Ukraine in time?
Of course we will.
How long will it take to get there?
At the end of the first quarter of the year. And that's what we are going to do.
Yeah, how many months? 2, 3, 4?
I just said at the end of March, I think.
Now, the reason for this rush, the reason for this push is this counteroffensive. As the weather gets warmer,